game with style, off-meta gameplay and builds.
Hello and welcome to Grimsforge Gaming. Today we're going to be jumping in and taking a look at my old man strength. This is my old man Kratos, and with subclassing and everything, and where we're at with the meta in the game currently. We're in a weird spot. So the time to kill is probably the fastest we've ever seen in ESO, especially with, and that's been like kind of exacerbated by the subclassing, right? Everyone's running Assassination along with Templar and Warden, and so we have all the burst and all the extra damage. Anyways, everyone's dying right now, for the most part, unless you're built around immense speed and you're able to just kite and get away. If you're stuck in fights, you're going to be experience a lot of pressure right now. And so even people that run 3K crit resistances and above, they are still feeling the immense pressure right now because of subclassing. So, and honestly, that might be for the next year or longer, while they're going through and they're figuring out what they're going to do with subclassing and what they're going to be doing with the class balancing, right? So, anyways, I tried a couple different builds here, and one of them was not so much a build, it was just slapping on torque of the last Alien King, right? You get all the weapon and spell damage, all the recoveries, and the 15% mitigations. That works for me really well on some of my other playstyles and builds, but for this particular playstyle and build, I was running into, I didn't really feel the 15% mitigations the way I would have liked, and the recoveries were a little bit on the low, and so I was running into sustain issues in the extremely outnumbered fights. And it's because everybody is just hitting really hard, leaning into crit damage and stuff like that, and proc sets and everything else. So anyways, I decided to lean more into the defensive side of things and rely more on my understanding of PvP, the nuances of PvP, line of sight and dodge roll, and how to line up your burst and put people down, and I had a lot more success with that. So just explaining all that to bring us to where we're at with the build, okay? Anyways, let's jump in and look at this. The first thing is you're going to notice that I am wearing Mighty Chudan. The reason that I went with Mighty Chudan is because maintaining my armor buff, there's a lot of, aside from there being immense damage in the game right now, there is a lot of methods to strip resistance, major and minor breach, and then there's armor sets that actually remove self buffs and things like that. And your UI doesn't do a good job sometimes of upkeeping your buffs as well. Like as far as I will look at my action bar and my armor buff is saying that I need to reapply it, but then when I look in all the buffs that I currently have, it will say that I have my armor buff going, and so for some reason there's just some disconnect there. Anyways, I found myself over buffing because of that, and it became a real problem with sustain in extended fights, having to reapply my armor buff because I was assuming it was down, okay? And so anyways, Mighty Chudan solved that problem. It also frees up a slot when you run Mighty Chudan, and some people will be like, I'm not going to trade out my armor buff for Mighty Chudan. I'm just simply not, because I want to run Balor's monster set with all the pin and all the weapon damage or whatever. That's fine. You do you. This is working out really well for me. One less thing I have to worry about, because I'm trying to kill people. I'm not trying to do a buff simulator, okay? And so that's kind of where I rested with that. You can also see that we're running death dealers here for the additional stats. This doesn't need to be death dealers for you. It could be Pale Order, especially if you're running around solo. Pale Order is really nice. This could also be Wild Hunt. And there's just a lot of options. Right now I'm running death dealers, and this is working out really well for me, okay? So, the first armor set that I'm running is going to be Order's Wrath. and we're leaning into the crit damage as well. I'm not running a typical or meta subclassing setup with this. I had tried the meta subclassing setup, and I ran the meta subclassing setup with Torque of the Alien King, and I had a lot of weapon and spell damage and a lot of crit. I could do a lot of things. I just didn't have the sustain to fight outnumbered, how I often find myself. And so anyways, I was like, how can I get back to near numbers of that type of crit chance and damage output, but run something that's more tanky, more survivable. And so this is where we ended up resting at. Order's Wrath, you can see that we're running them all, and it's sharpened because of the pin, and we are running Deep Fissure on this, so you see that we have a physical, a base penetration of 7k, and then throw another 9 on top of that. And so if somebody's running around with 30k resistances, we're going to strip half their resistances on the right off the rip in the fight, and so that's good for us. Okay. So Order's Wrath, you can see we're running infused weapon damage, and then we're running infused weapon damage. Another thing too is you could switch these out and run, if you wanted to run with Swift on these to get a lot more speed in the build, you do you. Right now the extra weapon and spell damage is working fine for me, and then I've solved the speed issue through my abilities. Okay, the other set that we're running is going to be Wretched Vitality. So this is a front bar back bar setup with Order's Wrath on my front bar, and then when I switch to my back bar, then Wretched Vitality is active. Okay, and so this gives us all the recoveries we need when we go to our back bar, and then we maintain those as we go to our front bar to fight. I really like where the sustain on this is. As a side note, stick to the very end. I have 2 separate battlegrounds for you to watch. One of them is against a really solid four-man team, and they have immense burst potential, and you could see how this handles it. And I did die in that battleground one time, and I died because I was trying to go, I put the pedal down farther than I should, and I burned more resources than I should to be able to escape. And so that death, I own that. That was my fault in it. But there are going to be times in that battleground where you'll see how much pressure this thing can take and how durable it is, and why the abilities that I'm running make it effective. Okay. Another thing too is we are running 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're running 5 heavy and then the 2 medium right here. Okay, and so you'll get your armor passives from that. Okay, some people are also going to say that the weapon and spell damage is on the low. Even on the build that I was running Alien King, and I had like 8,500 weapon and spell damage, I could kill people, but I wasn't able to kill a bunch of people and sustain for an extended period of time, and that was the problem. With this, I can sustain and kill the same amount of people. I just have to work just a little bit more for it. Like, you know, that build was working double the weapon and spell damage of this, and probably double the crit values of this. So it was much more offensive. It just wasn't holding up in the outnumbered fights. Okay. Okay, let me do something here real quick. We're going to buff up real quick, and just so you guys can see, we break the 5k weapon and spell damage, and let's do this again real quick. Sorry. You can see that we're at 1,700, almost 1,800 salmon and recovery, and mag recovery. That works out really well, 5k. And then our crit, weapon critical is at 27%. And we have some other things that lean kind of into this, so that works out really well. Something to note too is on our back bar, we have 40k resistances. So even if we have major and minor breach on us, we're near our cap resistances. Okay, so this has been actually really huge for me. Another thing too is, like, once we start talking about the abilities, you'll see why we're so durable on our back bar. Okay. All right, let's do that now. We talked about the build and flexibility there. Oh, this poison too. If you want to run this poison, this is fine. I rarely use this, but it's on there if I needed to. It's a long drawn out fight, and I need to have both a hard CC and a soft CC. This immobilization is a soft CC, and so when I get to the part where I decide that this is going to be a resource fight, I'll stun them, and then I'll also make sure that I switch my back bar and hit them with a light attack and hopefully apply this, okay? But all right, let's look at abilities here real quick, and don't worry, this is unbuffed. So the tooltips might look like they're on the low. Actually, I might just buff up for you so that way you can see what we're running Toppling Charge. Toppling Charge is a mag expense for us, and I would have to say on this build, the only thing that I need to watch out for when I'm fighting outnumbered is that I'm not gap closing or using this toppling charge to get to too many different targets, going from one to the other, because the 3600 is a little bit more of a mag draw than I would like it to be to close the gap, when a lot of my survivability abilities and heals on my back bar pull from the mag pool as well. And so you just have to be careful that you're not being too offensive and make it to where you can't use any of your defensive capabilities, okay?
Only the finest merchandise.
We're using biting jabs. The reason we're using biting jabs is it's good consistent pressure. It also has major brutality, major sorcery built into it, and at a 2200 stam cost, that's not very much. And the fact that we're using the two-hander, we can get those resources back just channeling one heavy attack, and we're back in the fight. And so biting jabs solved a bar slot space issue by having to have major brutality, major sorcery on my bar somewhere. It's built into my primary offensive spammable, okay? Also, I can just activate it if I need my weapon and spell damage to be higher for what, you know, better heals or whatever. And so this was really nice. Also, the game currently, there's so much speed in the game between Wild Hunt and Swift now, and all the abilities in the game that can make you move faster. It's way different than where we were at 5 years ago, right? Speed is much more accessible to everybody. And so biting jabs was actually solving the problem. It's a conal area of effect in front of you, does direct damage, and reduces, per strike reduces the enemy's movement speed by 40%, keeping them in front of me. So that's really nice. Also, there's some really good passives attached to the Templar skill line that make this smart play as well, okay? You can see our Deep Fisher, the first one's going to hit for 10k, the second one's going to hit for 14k, and this is going to apply major and minor breach. This chunks people, and the nice thing about it is that first one's going off in 3 seconds, so I can hit it while I'm en route to the target. I can activate it and then gap close to them, stunning them, almost guaranteeing that I get this hit on them to get that major and minor breach on them. Also, major protection, by the way. I forgot to mention that. You get major protection, and we have access to minor protection on the build as well, and we have access to minor evasion. So when you're talking about the trade-off on that flat 15% mitigations from the Ayleid King, Torque of the Ayleid King, we have it built into our play style with, you know, we've got major protection, we've got minor protection, and we have minor evasion. So we do feel really tanky on this, okay? Okay. All right, we're running Reverse Slice. I always run Reverse Slice. I know Executioner has the higher executing threshold or capability, but I am typically fighting outnumbered, and so when I get one person low and I go into my execute phase on them, I want everyone else to feel that pressure as well. And you very sneaky like can execute one of a teammate that's not keeping up on their heals, and the splash damage from this kind of echoes out or reverberates out and around them, and in turn puts everyone else in jeopardy too. So there are times where I could just, instead of going back to my regular rotation, I can just stay on a just reverse slice, reverse slice, reverse slice, reverse slice, and next thing you know, 2 or 3 people are dead because it snowballs out of control. Okay, let's buff up again here. We are running Crescent Sweep, and I'm still leveling this. Typically, you can run whatever ultimate you want. I can tell you that Crescent Sweep is more pressure than Dawnbreaker. And so I like Dawnbreaker of smiting. It's got a nice tooltip on it, and it's got dot pressure over it. The 125 cost, this is basically half of that, you know. For about half of that, I can get a Crescent Sweep off, which means I can basically get this off almost 2 times more than I can get this off. And I don't need Dawnbreaker of smiting for the stun, because my gap closer into somebody is my stun, okay? And I want to gain that major protection by gap closing into the fight. And so Dawnbreaker, you can do that. You're going to get more weapon and spell damage with the passives down here by doing that. You're going to do more damage to werewolves and vampires by doing that. I don't know. My buddy Rotten and I were talking about this. I don't know that you're going to see a whole lot of vampires next patch, because everyone and their mother and their grandmother is going to be the new revised DK, right? The new DK, and so there's just going to be a lot of flame damage out there, and so it'd be kind of silly to run around as a vampire next patch until things kind of get figured out. You're definitely going to feel it. Okay, so if you want to run this, or you want to run the two-hander and bonk people, you can do that just fine. But Crescent Sweep, being up with only 75 ultimate, and I've seen this thing absolutely truck, like just crush people. The rotation on this is, you know, preloading your Deep Fissure, gap closing to them, and hitting them with a Crescent, and then going right into your sweeps, and then right into your execute. We have everything we need right here to finish people very quickly, even at only 5k weapon and spell damage. It's not so much about how much weapon and spell damage you can get. It's do you have a good rotation, and can you maintain pressure on people? Do you know how to maintain your crowd control effects on them and make it a resource fight, and basically just put them on their back bar and make them just have to try and survive the onslaught. Okay, so yeah, that's been working out really well. Let's look at the back bar here. This right here is a flex spot, and I've been trying to decide what I'm going to do with this. I felt like I needed something that was defensive oriented, or defensive in its purpose, that was pulling from my stamina pool. I didn't want to have a bunch of mag stuff. This is here specifically because it is a stamina effect. You can see that it's only level 1. I'm rarely on my back bar, and I'm not leveling it very much, and so I know that there's different morph options of this and stuff. This is basically just something, if I have the stamina available and I just went to my back bar and I need to kind of tank down a little bit, I can hit this and get myself some extra shields. Okay, this goes up higher, I believe. Let me look and see how this works down here. Yeah, so 25k, almost 26k shield. That's a massive shield, and when somebody uses a range attack on it, it's going to shoot a frost bolt or snowball at them that will stun them. This thing right here is almost my direct counter to Merciless and the silliness that comes from that. Everyone's running Assassination. You have this ability that has a higher tooltip than ultimates in the game, and all you need to do is light and heavy attack people to fire it twice at people. Also, if you are running a particular type of setup, you can make sure it's a guaranteed critical from stealth on people. So this is how I'm dealing with everyone and their neighbor running Merciless right now. It's an overtuned ability that's a lot of fun. it's just not balanced very well, and so this is how I'm dealing with that. This also blocks a lot of other things that people aren't aware of, like, so if you're running against werewolves, not necessarily the claw swipe, but the bite animation. I forgot what the name of the ability is, where the werewolf kind of chomps down on you. That ability is blocked by this, and so aside from the claw swipe and the gap close to swipe after that, and the dot damage, their main ability that trucks a bunch of direct damage off of you is blocked by this, and so that's pretty good to know. Okay. 10k tooltip on our polar wind, and we have an additional like 3k health every 2 seconds for 10 seconds, and it heals a nearby ally. This is a great ability. Also, the reason that we get to 40k resistances is because of the passives of our Templar, and the fact that we have this on our bar, this on our bar, and this on our bar is adding to our resistances on our back bar. So we'll talk about that when we get there. Haven't done one of these videos in a while. Okay, Resolving Vigor, we got an 18k tooltip on this, and it gives us our minor resolve. And then you can see here, this ability is going to be doing a damage shield on us. It's a very small damage shield. And then we have our charm, our Warden charm on this. If you're a Warden and you're not running charm, you're probably a purist, and you're like, I'm not going to use that because it's broken. It is broken. Very rarely do you realize that you're being charmed until your character starts walking towards the person that did it. So you have to be able to recognize the visual effect amongst all the other crazy stuff that's going on. And you can see this thing on the ground here. Let me move out into the open here real quick. We'll have to let it recharge here. But the visual effect on it is a large ring on the circle, or on a large circle on the ground. And so if people don't recognize what it is, they're going to find themselves getting charmed every 7 seconds. Okay, and so in the battleground where it was extremely sweaty, I was trying to stay on this ability to make fights more of a resource fight and not allow the enemy team to free cast. But it's a mag pull. You can see that a third of my mag is gone just by doing this ability. Okay, so anyways, we have that ability set up with the charm effect, and then it also grants us minor courage at the bottom there for an extra 215 weapon and spell damage. On the back bar, I'm running Northern Storm. When we're fighting extremely outnumbered and I'm trying to add a lot of pressure onto people, I'll hit Northern Storm instead of the Crescent and dive into groups. There's a couple things. This is going to do damage to them, obviously, but it's also going to slow them, and it's going to give me major protection, which I should already have from my gap close into people. But the primary use of this is when people are balled up into a group. I'm hoping to be able to hit my Deep Fissure and dive into a group, hit them with a Deep Fissure, and then have Northern Storm going off, and it actually breaks the group. It gets half of them running off this way, half of them running off the other way, and then the healer stuck somewhere in the middle, or the healer stuck by me getting chopped up while everyone's trying to get out of the thing. Okay, and so that's for your beginner to intermediate PvP groups. Your advanced intermediate to advanced PvP groups will just eat the damage and out heal or out shield it. Okay, but you will have success breaking up groups with just hitting this and diving in. Okay. Alright, let's look at a couple things here. Number one, Animal Companion, and we have two abilities from that and the passives for it. Anytime one of your Animal Companion skills ends, you are healed. And so every time my Deep Fissure goes off, or every time I hit this, when this is complete, you'll see a heal come in from that. While you're in combat, you're generating additional ult, which is awesome. Gets us back to our next Crescent that much quicker. Increase your mag and stam recovery by 20%. This is actually huge. 20% extra mag and stamina recovery is impressive. Okay, and then extra critical damage. I have an extra 10% critical damage just because I have those 2 abilities stacked. Now, at one point, instead of having Animal Companion here, I was actually running Nightblade, and I was running the Assassination skill line, and you know, I was basically operating with Surprise Attack or a D-Swing build. Didn't have this, and I was running Merciless in its stead, right? So you get a lot more burst potential with Merciless, a lot more burst potential, but Deep Fish are applying that Major and Minor Breach and firing twice, and it being kind of on a little bit lower mag cost at 2,700, I ended up going back to this. And so it wasn't that I couldn't put people away, and it wasn't that Merciless didn't hit really hard, it was just not fitting my play style. Also, another thing too, if you're going to go D-Swing or some type of channeled offensive spammable, hitting your light and heavy attacks takes just a little bit longer, right, as opposed to an instant direct damage attack. And so it just seemed to me like running this rotation, setting it up, was going to work better for me. Winter's Embrace. This is actually going to be why we're able to push the resistances we do on our back bar. Let's see here. Increase the chance to apply still chilled status effect, which is fine because of that ultimate on my back bar here, Northern Storm, and increase its damage by 433. So that's cool. Here, right there, increase your physical and spell resistances by 3720 because I have those 3 abilities on my back bar. And you take that additional resistances and stack it on top of the extra resistances that come from being a Nord. That's why I have 40k resistances on my back bar, and I feel safer on this build in this crazy burst meta. Okay. And when you take direct damage from an enemy, right here, attacks are made major maim, okay, for 3 seconds, reducing their damage by 10%. So that's actually really nice. And increase the amount of damage you can block, increase the frost damage by 15%. So all these things kind of work towards using this ability and empowering them, or giving us more defensive capability, resistances on our back bar. So for sure, I would not trade out these 2 things. This is such a great heal for PvP, and this is such a great ability to counter the meta of the Merciless, you know, the Merciless stuff that's going on, okay? And so I would not trade these 2 at all, all right? And then the last thing is going to be the Adric Spear ability. I was actually looking at doing a Sun Shield or Burning Blazing Shield type build to see if that was still a thing, but I wasn't really happy with, you know, early test results of it, and also this isn't the guy to do that on. It's not very thematic for Old Man Kratos. So here's more critical damage. Increase your crit damage by 12% when you have an Adric Spear ability slotted. Increase your damage done to blocking players by 12%, and so that's really nice. We are doing more damage to blocking players through that other passive as well, and so we're starting to stack that. Here is our Minor Berserk and Minor Protection when you activated a Adric Spear ability. So we get our Major Protection from this, and then if we go right into our sweeps, we now have Minor Protection, Major Protection, Minor Protection, and Minor Evasion. And so that was really nice. When you're dealing damage, this is Burning Light. When you're dealing damage, generate a stack of Burning Light for 3 seconds. After reaching 4, you do some additional damage. So we have extra damage kind of built into this, and then we have Balanced Warrior for an extra 6% weapon and spell damage. And so that's been pretty nice. Okay, 2-handers, make sure you get all those passives. There's a lot of stamina recovery right here too. So once we finish off a player, we'll gain. And if you read that, that's increase your stamina recovery by 30% for 10 seconds. It's not actually, when you look at like your potions and you're reading there, Major Fortitude, Major Intellect, Major Endurance, it's a completely different 30%. And so I don't know how diminishing returns or gains or whatever work in this, but you get 30% when you pop a potion here, and you're getting another 30 from two-hander. So your stamina recovery seems to be able to hold up just fine on this. I was really happy with that. Okay, and then on my back bar, you could run shield wall and then run spell wall on your back bar, but I just found more value in breaking up ball groups with this. I'm not going to be able to hit my spell wall and then jump into a group and start attacking and them feel like they need to spread out or run in different directions. Just has a different effect on the beginner to intermediate groups than this thing does, okay? Especially if a deep fissure goes off just as you dive in and you're spamming sweeps and this is going off. It just convinces them to spread out and move away, okay? Get all your passives for your sword and board. I will hold block on my back bar if I have the stamina to burn while I'm casting these abilities to get caught back up. And if I have to, I could stay on my back bar and just channel a heavy attack with the sword and board too to get more stamina back in the tank. You can see we have all of our medium armor passives. The most important would probably be agility and athletics, so for roll dodging. And then we have all the passives for your heavy armor. And yeah. Okay, grab these if you can afford to unlock them, and then you can see that we are a Nord. And so we're going to have extra health and frost resistance there, extra stamina, and ult gen built into the class. And there's our extra resistances. You take that 2600 plus the 3700. People are going to be like, I don't know how the heck you got your resistances so high. It's because I'm a Nord and we have those abilities stacked on our back bar that allow us, and you can see we're near cap on our front bar. This has just worked out really, really well for me, okay? Okay, let's look at CP here. Green Tree doesn't matter all that much. I am running War Mount and I'm running Gifted Rider, and I have Master Gatherer right now, and Steed's Blessing for an extra 20% movement speed. This is a must, I would say. And then this one right here, actually, I could afford to get this. This is really nice. This is important too, I guess. This one right here, Breakfall, is important. I would say definitely pick this up too if you're trying to power level some of your subclassing and stuff like this, your Discipline Artisan. But this is how we have this set up right now. Here's what I have going on in this tree. Right now I have Untamed Aggression for an extra 150 weapon and spell damage. I have Wrathful Strikes for another 205 weapon and spell damage, and I'm running Reaving Blows. All my direct damage, which is about everything that I do, heals me, and so that's going to help me stay off my back bar just a little bit longer, or push, you know, when you're doing offense and doing damage and you're also getting heals in, it allows you to continue to apply pressure on people, and you're rewarded for that pressure, okay? So that's what we got. And then the last thing over here is increase your damage done with direct damage attacks, and almost everything we do is direct damage attacks, except for the dot, I think, on the crescent sweep. So I'll have to read how that looks, but and they might even consider that direct damage 3 separate attacks for X amount rather than saying 20k over 10 seconds. So who knows, but this has worked out really well for us. Another thing too is this right here. If you want to stay more offensive and stay on your front bar more, and you're very bursty and you have a lot of real heavy hitting abilities, Reaving Blows is actually really nice. You'll be surprised how much more you can stay on your front bar and stay active and not have to maintain your vigor or stuff like that. So I really like that a lot, okay? Over here I'm running Rejuvenation. We need more recoveries. I'm running Fortified for that extra 1730. You could probably, with the amount of resistances that this build has, you could drop this or drop that, and you could come in here and go into Pain's Refuge for an extra 20% damage mitigation. But I took the mindset that I'm just going to out heal it, and so that's been actually working really well for me. And so there are times that you won't be able to out heal things, and then you need to shield up, and so we're running a combination of shielding up and healing up together. Okay, we're running max health right there, and then when you come in here, you'll see Thrill of the Hunt. You gain major expedition every time you kill something. I have access to major expedition, and I might come off of this. I'm trying to save myself an activation, trying to hit my wings and save myself the mag from moving from target to target quickly, and so that's the thought process on this. But you could come down here and do celerity for an extra 10% movement speed at all times. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so that's kind of where we're at with our CP. And then armor wise here, let's see, no helm, obviously. I wish we had a tattoo for Old Man Kratos. I don't know that they'll ever add that, but we are running Daggerfall pauldrons here. I like that look a lot. And we're running the Skin Changer bracers because that's very God of War Kratos for sure. And then we're running the Silken Ring cuirass, and this was mostly because I liked the chest piece and it showed off the arms, and I was trying to get a little bit of a tattoo look for him somewhere, since we couldn't get the one that wraps around the head. We're running Abner Tharn's sash. He let us borrow it. He's such a good friend. We're running the Huntsman Sabatons, and the Huntsman Sabatons went really well with the bracers here. We were trying to stick with like a Kratos type theme. And this is going to be our Leviathan axe, which is the Sword Thane battle axe. And then on the back bar, this is one of the Blades of Chaos, the Silken Ring dagger. We run this on our Ghost of Sparta. And we have run that for a long time. And right now we're running the Gloombound shield because Kratos' shield actually kind of comes out of his bracer, and so I could have a shield there just all the time, but I figured we'll just kind of play that. So that's what we're doing for Kratos' aesthetics, to try and make him look like, you know, Kratos. Anyways, this is the build that you're about to see in the two battlegrounds. The first battleground I'm going to show you is the ultra sweaty one. We were playing a really good team, and I believe we even lost that battleground. We gave them a run. They were just really good at moving together and capturing the flags. And this was maybe my third battleground back, fourth battleground back in almost a year. And so I definitely feel rusty. I look rusty, but we'll get it back, no problem. Okay. Oh, another thing here too before it wears out. You can see that food-wise we're running Smoke Bear Haunch for the recoveries, and we're running the Thief Mundus Stone for the extra crit resistance. If it weren't for this, we wouldn't even have the 27% crit value. I do see a lot of crits, but we also have a lot of damage sources going out between our jabs and our deep fisher and our crescent sweep hitting, and then our the pulses from the crescent sweep. So there's a lot of damage going out that to you know, see that damage go. But you could make this whatever you want if you don't want to run the Thief. And food wise, I would definitely stick with Smoke Bear Haunch. You need the recoveries if you're fighting outnumbered. Okay, I think that's about it. Check out the battlegrounds here. Also, side note, if you've waited this long, hi, I haven't seen you in a while. How are you? Something that you're going to notice with this, we have an ultra sweaty battleground, and then we have a battleground where we just stomp the other team really badly. And this is a perfect example of there being a complete lack of MMR or a failed system. If there is an MMR, it is very busted. It is the second team that we ran into. This just exacerbates or further shows why two-team battlegrounds are really bad. Okay, they're just not fun for people. Okay, and so we need to get back to a full-time 3 battleground situation, because if one team wants to stand down and try and spawn camp another team, at least the third team's out there getting everybody out of the battleground, instead of a team just standing up there refusing to jump down because they're just getting chewed on. Okay, so we need to get back to a full-time 3-team battleground. The 2-team battleground is just complete garbage, and the fact that there's no MMR, functioning MMR, makes it that much worse. Okay, that will ruin future PvPers. They will step in and they will be spawn camp for 2 or 3 games in a row, and they'll be like, the hell with this. And so it just needs a change. If you're out there listening, make that change. It will be one of the best changes that you ever made. Bring 3-person battlegrounds back, not on a temporary basis or a weekend event. Bring it back full time, and you will be doing a huge service to the PvP community and the future PvP community. All right, that's all I got to say. I talked way too much. Watch the battlegrounds, have fun. Miss you guys. All right, bye.
It'll start with a 4v3. So even if they don't get a force, which they might or might not. The Kush Dragon OG.
They got steals the bomb. Gravedigger outfit. You gotta go for that. Just realized that.
Holy shit. Yeah, 16k Merciless. This game's fun.
I hate that I can't jump over that shit.
I like the part where I was One
You
on
gotta
point.
capture the flag. Nice fucking move, dude.
So funny because I can stay on my sword and board bar, still heal, and have major. I can't take that back. Just get focused.
healing a lot. Do they all have the same build? That's what I want to know. Lost to the points. Maybe